Do your portrait drawings tend to look a bit like this? These are some of my early attempts at capturing the human face on paper, and this is how your portrait drawings probably look too when you're first starting out or haven't drawn for very long. Kind of flat and crooked, and the head proportions are not quite right, there's no real depth to them, they don't really resemble their subjects, etc. Even when we're more experienced, portrait drawings often end up in uncanny valley, where they're almost there, but not quite. Some things are just off, and we can't figure out what. Or maybe we make the same mistakes over and over again, like drawing the eyes too big, or not knowing what to do about hair. There are many ways to mess up a portrait, but why does it happen? And what can we do about it? Let's look at 4 of the most common ways our portrait drawings fail. The first one happens before we even start drawing, and that's when choosing our subject. Either when we're setting up a live model situation or when we're picking out a reference photo to work from. And since most of us are working from photo references, let's focus on that. If the photo we're using is kind of boring or lacks good lighting, then our drawing is doomed to look kind of boring and flat and bland too. A great photograph doesn't automatically translate into a great drawing, and it's important to know what to look for in a reference photo that gives us something to work with and sparks our own creativity. Stuff like lighting and contrast and posture and expression. The second very common mistake is to dive straight into drawing the details of the face before we have established the overall shape of the head and placing the landmarks correctly. This big picture rough sketch is what establishes the likeness and the believability, not the eyelashes or the shading of the hair. And the more time we spend on these minor details early on, the less we'll be able to correct our mistakes later. I can't be the only one who's done this numerous times, spending like an hour on a portrait drawing and then stepping away from it, only to realize that the person looks like an alien and now it's too late to fix it. Well, if we start off with really light and loose lines and big shapes, getting the basic proportions right first, then the rest of the drawing will be much easier to get right. The third common mistake is focusing only on drawing the contours of everything and ending up with something that looks like it belongs in a coloring book. It might look accurate, it might have all of the necessary components in the right places, but there's no life in it. There's no three-dimensionality and no sense of the form and the shape of the head. It looks flat, and that's because it lacks contrast. A contrast in sharpness and softness, and a contrast between light and dark. Objects closer to us usually have sharper contours, while objects further away are more blurry. And shadows and highlights tell us about the shape of someone's face, how deep set their eyes are, the shape of their cheekbones, the fullness of their lips. When there is contrast between light and shadow, and between sharpness and softness, then something tends to look more lifelike and three-dimensional. So, knowing how to shade our drawing is crucial for avoiding this flat and over-contoured look. And the fourth common mistake is to overcomplicate our drawing, rendering in every little lock of hair, every wrinkle, every eyelash, thinking that these things will make our drawing more lifelike, more realistic. But realism comes in many shapes and flavors, and with a drawing, less is more. The more little details you put in, the more likely you are to create a cluttered appearance with too many lines and shapes. Too much information confuses the eye, and in art, it's often the removal of stuff that makes it fascinating to look at. Keeping some parts of the subject in shadow or a little blurry, it adds mystery to the piece and it gives our brains something to work with. And sure, some people are into photorealistic art, but to be honest, I just don't see the point. We have cameras for that, so why not instead exercise our artistic freedom and our creativity. And we do that by being selective about our details, choosing to simplify some areas of the subject and maybe telling the story with fewer pencil strokes, not more. So what can we do about these mistakes? How do we avoid them? I've created a Skillshare class for that, and it's called Portrait Drawing for Beginners. And in it, I teach my step-by-step process for drawing a portrait, from choosing a good reference photo, to getting the head proportions and the facial features right, to shading and rendering and capturing the likeness of a person. This is the class I wish I'd had when I started out wanting to improve my portraits. No anatomy lessons or complicated wireframe models, just basic observation skills and sketching techniques. The process and concepts that I'm teaching is what's taken my portraits from this to this, over just a few months of practice. If you already are a Skillshare member, you can get started with the class right away. The link is in the description. And if you're new to Skillshare, you can take my class for free by signing up for an account and starting your free trial. Just sign up using the link in the description. Maybe we'll see each other in the class? Otherwise, I hope this video has given you some clues on how to improve your portrait drawings. It all starts by learning how to look and how to accurately capture what your eyes see. I have a sketching exercise that might help with this, and you should see it linked on the screen now. It's also linked in the description. Happy drawing, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.